Hello and welcome. It is with great pleasure that we invite you to be with us in the next 30 minutes. We're going to be talking to our main therapist, certified hypnotherapist here at IAM, International Association of Alternative and Ancient Medicine. We welcome you, whichever technique or therapy you practice, to join us. We're here to heal and to evolve. So it's wonderful to have Maria-Pilar Gonzalez in this holiday, coming to you live to talk a little bit about her practice and all these wonderful techniques that you can use through hypnosis to basically address any problem, any issue that you might have in your life. So Maria-Pilar, welcome. And we were just talking about this common trend, the emotional abuse, not just the physical, but the emotional. You've been experiencing a lot of clients coming lately for that reason. Tell us a little bit. Welcome. How are you?
Hi, how are you? I welcome you all today on a Memorial Day, and I'm actually at my house. So
beautiful bookshelf, by the way.
Thank you. I'm sitting in my grandchildren's little corner here. So emotional and verbal abuse, as well as physical abuse, because of this whole COVID situation, people have been more confined inside the home, and there's been more of that going on because of the closeness and not being able to go anywhere, going to work and so forth, or working from home. But the importance is that we have to find and understand what happens when we have emotional, verbal abuse, of course, physical abuse as well, which goes right along with it. But it is really more mental, because the person who is being abused becomes so depleted of their self-worth, becomes completely annulled of their own identity and self-worth, that they only function on the little bit of love that they receive after the abuse happens. So that they believe that once they're out of this, even an abusive relationship, which they know they're in, for the most part, they don't know how to function outside, because they truly believe, as the abuser has told them, that they're worth nothing, that nobody's going to love them. And if that has been going on for years, and often it even happens, it begins in maybe childhood from a parent, and then they seek to continue that through then a spouse who continues that because that's the only thing they actually know. And then they don't know how to break that. So with hypnosis, it is very important, because with hypnosis, we can go into the subconscious, where that part of yourself, that higher self, that true you is there. And we're all a divine being, and that is there. You are no less than nobody else. So we can bring that back out and find, and be secure again. I mean, it takes some work. I'm not going to say it won't, but in one session, it's not going to happen. But once you recognize who you really are, and you recognize that you have been someone who has contributed to this relationship in a positive way, in many ways. That's the thing. Many people do not recognize even a little bit of what they have done in their life. And they've done a lot, even more than many others, because they have survived an abusive relationship. So it's very important to bring that out.
You were talking about the voices in your head, this common figure, that we use when we are alone on our own, and we in solitude, and we still listen to some of these voices that some of them belong to our childhood. But moreover, when it comes to a relationship, a broken relationship, and there's been abuse, even if the person is no longer there, the counterpart, you still listen to them. So how in your practice are you able to get rid of that?
That is part of your self-talk. If you've been told over and over, then that voice becomes second to you. Again, it's in the unconscious. So because hypnosis goes into the unconscious or accesses that unconscious where these habits, even with your own thoughts, are, we change that. We change it. We play out scenarios. I've worked with young people who've been bullied, for example, and then they've been locked into their house for years doing homeschooling, and then become young adults going into their 20s, and they have socially isolated themselves because they replay that scenario of the bullying over and over. Now, it hasn't happened for 6, 7, 8, 9 years, 10 years, but the scenario keeps repeating in their mind. That's the habit, the unconscious, the long-term memory. So when we do hypnosis, just like with this abusive relationships, we replay those scenarios in a different way. We replay them in a positive way, how you would want them to have been. So especially when you're out of a relationship, out of a abusive relationship, whether verbal or emotionally, you have to stop replaying that scenario. Because every time you replay the scenario, it is as if it's happening again. So even if the relationship, the abusive relation stopped 20, 30 years ago, you can still be replaying it for 20, 30 years, which means you've been in that relationship virtually in your mind for another 20, 30 years. So in hypnosis, because we can go and stop it, it's like changing channels, as they call it, right? We change the channel. It's like, no, you're done. This is no longer there. And that's where then that healing starts, because you're not reliving it again. There is no need to relive it. You're out of it at this point. And that's where you begin to then be a new you. And that voice, as you said, stops playing it over and over.
I'm thinking as I hear you about this virtual environment we live in. You know, there's not just the reality, what we call the 3D reality, but we also have the virtual reality. Some might say that everything is really virtual, but let's just stick to what we have here in the third dimension. But then, especially the youth, they're so into the virtual with the video games, and most of these softwares are involved a lot of violence, no? And I'm just thinking as I listen to you, all these images, all these scenarios, situations of action and violence and aggression, they stick to your subconscious in a way. It's like before we would watch a movie and we would get so impressed about it, no? But right now it's becoming, there's an added layer of reality to every single game that comes out. So how to deal with that? How is this subconscious really affected? And could that be the reason why there's also so much anxiety and rage everywhere?
Well, we have talked about this before. We can become hypnotized, or we get hypnotized to be unhypnotized from the world out there, which is obviously through now all these video games and all the movies we watch, all the television programs, and what you're exposed to on a daily basis, whether it's home or virtually through movies. That's what you're being exposed to, which means a child from childhood, what you see over and over again is what you believe the world is. And this is interesting because, as you said, it can be, if you're watching your parents being abusive to each other, that's what you believe is actually normal. So then when you grow up, that's what you pick. You pick someone who plays that role that you have been exposed to. The same happens then with those video games. If you are very young, and remember, the most impressionable years where we absorb most of these standards are between the age, once you're born through 5 and 7 years of age. So if you're exposed, and nowadays children are constantly on these tablets and so forth, playing these games, especially if they are allowed to play video games, violent video games, that is what they're exposed to, which means that's why I don't understand how parents don't regulate what they play, because then for them to get a gun and shoot, they don't realize it. To them, it's like, oh yeah, they're going to get up and walk away. Of course not. But because they're so exposed, the splatter of blood or this violence to them is nothing really. They can be violent against animals because that's what they see. It is something that you're exposed to. Remember that even animals, if you expose an animal, they have seen where they have a tiger or a lion, which in the wild would be someone you can't even get close to. If you expose him to calm and peace and get along with the lamb, the lion or the tiger will not harm the lamb because it didn't learn that. And the same happens to us. You can go violent in that matter or not at all. I'm sure you can train a lamb to become violent if you expose it or you allow it to be with animals that are more violent. It will probably learn to be that way. And we are the same. We get programmed into that. Think about people who live in different countries in more rough environments, and they survive, and they're able to do things that you and I, living in a city like Miami, would never capable of doing, because they learn to be that way. And it is not just physically, it's also mentally. You're exposed and you learn to be that way. We learn to be a certain way, whatever we're exposed to. So violence is one of those. If you have seen your parents being abused, you learn to be that way, and you pick someone who will be that way because that's what you know. That's your pattern.
So much to take in account when it comes to figuring out your own condition or the circumstances in which we grow in, and the information that we carry. We can just use it to our favor or against us. No, some people are able to really overcome. Regardless of their upbringing, and really make out something really useful of themselves. But it takes a lot of work, or maybe a miracle. We are offering hypnosis today because we think that this is one of the most effective tools to really clear those the clogs, I would say, that are not letting you achieve that happiness. So some people might say, yeah, I want to be happy, and I tend to engage in this kind of relationships, but without knowing that they are being programmed, in their search. So how many sessions do you recommend? Do you think it's that it's prudent, to be able to identify all these patterns and really get rid of them?
You targeted this very well, Kike, because the most important part is to recognize that there is a pattern, and that the miracle, as you call it, is the fact that we need to understand that we all have free will, which means we all have the power to get out of it. We do. Now, and here you go. How many sessions? That really depends on each person, because you don't know how long was the abuse, how severe was the abuse, how open is the person to be able to make a change. Some people think with hypnosis, you have one session and it's like a magic wand and boom, it's gone. Well, no, it isn't. You have to want to make the work. And it is important. But I know that patterns, usually by 4 sessions, you are breaking patterns already. Now, from there on, it can go into further sessions, 7, 8, 10 sessions. It really depends on where you are, and how quickly and how deep these patterns are. Obviously, someone who's been in 10 years of abuse is one thing. Someone who's been 40 years in abuse is another thing. And also the severity of it. And of course, the disposition, which is very important in hypnosis. How much do you really want to change? And, how open are you to accept that you allowed this? See, this is another thing. A victim really allows to be victimized in some way. Of course, nobody says, hey, oh yeah, I love to be victimized or beaten or verbally abused or emotionally abused. But we allow it in some extent. I mean, we have to understand that we are allowing it every single day. And is it hard to get out? Of course it is. Nobody's saying that it isn't. But when you begin to understand, hey, this is not something for me, we do have choices. Going to a shelter is not easy. Having to break off and start from scratch when you think you have nothing is very difficult. But there is help. And if you really want, if you put that effort forward, there is help and you can get out of it, because we all have so much power within us to grow and get out. And that is so important to recognize. No matter what you have to do, there are jobs, you can find money, even if you live in a small place for the beginning. But that's the beginning of you understanding what you are worth, what you can, what you are, and the power you have. Once you say no, that is it. That is the beginning. Because a person who is abusive also thrives on seeing when the person puts their head down and accepts the abuse. Once that doesn't work anymore, you're taking the power away from the other person. Do you need to go help hide and everything? There are cases, obviously, where you need to go and really seek help to that extent. But there is often, I think, a lot of people do not realize how emotionally they're being abused and verbally, and it's very subtle. And in many cases, they're not recognizing the abuse because it is so subtle. And the person may seem very kind and nice and friendly even to others. And it's like, no, that's not who you're talking about. But there is a narcissist, for example. Narcissists are everywhere and they're very subtle. And they're not those who you call the cops on, because it is very subtle. But the person is, is completely annulled. They're not allowed to work. They're just allowed to be in the house. And those are the types I've worked more with throughout the years. That is very subtle, but they're there. And that is, again, I was going to say it's almost more difficult to break out, because you can't call the cops and say, I was just beaten. It's very subtle. And then the children often see the pattern from a male or the father, and they tend to start doing that with the mother as well, to continue kind of that, the degrading part on the mother. It's very interesting.
Which takes us to what we've been talking about, and that it's I would call the condition of women in society, in a way. How women, especially in our Latin cultures, for instance, where the upbringing is always in disadvantage compared to the men, and all these religious beliefs about being inferior in a way, or not worth, or even that obedience she has to have to to her husband and things like that. So these are also beliefs that are there, and they're so how do you say, the stock, no, in the
Yeah,
subconscious.
yes, they are.
Exactly.
Yes.
So imagine, this happens every day. A woman gets divorced, and she's usually left with not one, two, two or more kids, trying to start a new life with the world against, like the world is totally so difficult to really, really get by in this world with kids and feel all alone. So this is a great, this is the exact moment when you need something like this. You need to really go inside and find those clues, that will lead you to a better understanding of your problem, because it's a problem basically, and start solving it with identifying all these beliefs.
Well, that's the thing. And like I said, that's why in these subtle cases, it's even more difficult because, it first starts where the male is like, oh, I'll take care of you. I'll do everything for you. All right, that's fine. Thank you very much. But, you can't go out of the house now. Who regulates the money? You can't even go back to studying, make something of yourself. You're just home and with the children. And oftentimes these roles then become that he goes out to work and he hangs out with friends or does things and the person doesn't get, or the woman doesn't get to do it. Again, because the person begins to play that you're worth nothing, you have no schooling, where are you going to go, what are you going to do? And I've known women that way, that were very capable of working, but in one specific case, he was married for the second time, was older, and his first wife actually had cheated on him and left him when they were younger, and this was the second wife who was younger. And of course, he wasn't going to expose her to going out to work now. And, because he was afraid to lose her as well in the workplace. So this woman was just at home, did nothing in the sense that, kept the house, but nothing else. And by the time her husband passed away at older age, this woman was now in her 50s and was now completely unable to go out into the workforce. Still continued with that mind game of, I went through so much, took care of her husband as he was sick with cancer and continued to, deteriorate. But there is nothing this person does now, except for keeping a house by herself, just day-to-day living at an age that today we're still very young at 50, that you can have so much more out of life. And now this person, is nothing to be done anymore, because in her mind, I'm too old now. You've always been told you can't do this. And this is not an abuse where you say, oh, wow, this was really hurtful. But, she was functioning just on a very low level. And at this point, this person is no longer there because this person doesn't know how to come out, So we need to recognize that. I know this person went to got a job at one point, but it lasted 6-8 months, because again the husband started saying, "Oh, they're not paying you enough. This is no good. Why are you doing this?" Didn't tell her stop, but began to filter this in again, and then it's like, "Oh yeah, and then you get tired of listening this little voice, and then you're like, "Yeah, really, they're not paying me enough. I should be getting more, so I quit." But you quit and then don't do anything at all. She could have stepped. By now, she would have had a job. She would be making a lot more money and be something more for at least another 10, 20 years, And these are the subtle little things that are important to recognize.
Well, when I was listening to you, you said that at 50 we're still very young. You really made my day. So
I like to believe that.
Something to appreciate today. And the fact that we are listening to these messages and that we can do something about it. There's really no age for starting a new perception, a new way of thinking about yourself and the life that surrounds you. It's really every day is an opportunity, and if you are listening to this, it's because something is calling you to make that change. So Pilar, this is something that's it's very common. It's more common than what we think, and it all starts with those subtle thoughts. Sometimes the first seconds of a thought, and we just feed it and we let it take control, and suddenly it turns into an emotion, and from that emotion it turns into a somatic. It manifests in the body in some kind of pain, and when you never at least you have something already installed, something going on in your body. So that's why it's important to catch those thoughts before they take over
from the beginning.
Exactly. So Pilar, this is your permanent activity. You are located in South Miami, and this is your number, 305.
Yes, I'm in Pinecrest.
Yes.
And in Pinecrest, you can call me. You feel free. I do give free, consultations on the phone to get to know me, to know what's going on. 305-595-1699. You can also look me up, Beacon Hypnotherapy Institute. I'm on Facebook. I have a page. I'm on Instagram, Beacon Hypnotherapy Institute. Feel free to contact me, email me, Maria-Pilar at Beacon Hypnotherapy, or call me. I'll be happy to speak with you. I do take my own phone calls, and I respond myself because I think it's important to know what is going on. And before you come in, I think it's my duty, and it is what you need to know if we're going to have this rapport, if I am the person that will click with you. It's very important to me. You're going to open up your whole life to me, and I think it's important to get to know me even before you come in. So feel free to call me and we'll chat.
And for some, might be useful to know that you are trilingual because you speak English,
yes.
Spanish, and German.
And so German, Deutsch.
Deutsche Sprachen?
Deutsche Sprache, schwere Sprache.
Okay. So any Freud fans that want to discuss these topics in original German, you can go to Maria-Pilar directly, right?
You're exposing me here.
It's not the same. You read those books in other language other than German, so you might get a kick out of those books when you...
They are. I have a few that I have looked into, and it's like, wow, very interesting to look into those. Definitely is.
There's a saying, I listened to it not too long ago. Before you want to be in good terms, before you want to reach the Buddha, you have to be in good terms with Freud.
Oh, wow. I haven't heard that.
Like you gotta solve your issues with Freud before trying to reach the Buddha.
Yeah. I believe that.
It says a lot.
And we have to all work on ourselves, we have to understand, and that's why it's so important to recognize, if you're in a situation that is not comfortable, let's put it this way, whether it's the abuse, verbal, emotional, or any other uncomfortable situation, weight issues, whichever it is, you have to recognize it first that, okay, why am I here? Why am I having this challenge? And if you recognize that you're being challenged, then it's because you have to learn something there. So if you have to learn something there, that means it's for you to improve. And this is where hypnosis can help you, because you can go within and recognize, why is this challenging me? Why is this challenge? If you have to learn math, then you're going to be challenged in math, right? Until you get it right. If you have a challenge in math, you're not going to an English class. You're going to get a math tutor And that's basically what it is in life. You go to someone to help you with the math, right?
Yeah, it's almost like saying, like some holistics say, if you want to work light, you have to work your shadow first, because
Yep.
you can't just stick to the light if you still have issues to solve. So you better get back to that before enjoying the good
sure.
the good part.
Exactly. That's really what it is. And it gets easier, really, because I always tell the person sitting there in front of me, look, whatever you realize that you have to learn or you have shortcomings on, it's okay. It's between you and you, or you and me and yourself, right? It's you and maybe me. But that's it. Nobody else needs to know what you're working through, what you're recognizing are your shortcomings. It's okay. It's all right. The more you recognize your shortcomings, the easier it is to fix them. And that's why I think hypnosis, I've been doing it for over 20 years, I think it's so great because it is the tool to go within and look at that. And imagine if you go through a lifetime being able to recognize that, for reincarnation purposes, you're going to be getting shortcuts moving on as a soul to learn more and more, and I think that is so wonderful. It is hard. It is a challenge. It is difficult to say, oh, no, not again. Here we go again. But like a Chinese proverb says, right? That's why. Thank your enemy because he or she is the one to challenge you to get better every day. And that's that. Be thankful and move on. And that's great.
So hypnosis will be another way to hack your evolution.
Yes, there you go. That's a new one. You always have these great to hack your. Very good. I like that.
We can use it.
Very good.
As a slogan. Maria-Pilar, always a pleasure to see you, and hope you have the rest of your holiday in good company with your loved ones. And it's always great to have a playroom, especially when it's a chaos, a messy playroom. That means there's life. There's always life around.
Yes, there is.
And a lot of and promises for the future. Thank you again. And hope
Thank
to
you,
see
Kike.
Next Monday.
See you next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.